everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Melissa and I'm here with my good friend Dorothy. She is currently writing a book, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your work?
Okay. My book is a young adult epic fantasy. Epic because it's very long. And it follows the life of a girl who grew up isolated from her world and is thrust into her world when she's orphaned through mysterious and magical means. And she has to figure out how to survive, and she has to figure out why everyone treats her weird and stares at her like there's something off about her. And that is the premise of the book.
It sounds amazing. I can't wait for it. Honestly, I'm stoked. So today we're gonna do like a little bit of an interview, and I'm just gonna ask you questions. And like I said before, you don't have to answer them if you don't feel comfortable. So
Yeah, I'm really stuck up, so that might happen.
okay, so let's start with, how do you manage your work schedule?
Work schedule.
You are
That's
a
a really
homeschool
efficient
mom,
way of, yeah.
You know,
So as a homeschool mom and a ranch wife, our schedule is constantly changing anyway, so I just kind of go with the flow. And when I have time to write, I write. So sometimes that'll come in bursts where I can write for 6 to 8 hours a day, and then I have to miss a week. So really it's just take it as it comes and work when I can.
So as far as like the ranching goes, do you guys have cattle, or so you guys, how many heads of cattle do you have?
Oh, around 30. We also do a lot of customs, so it ends up being quite a bit more than that sometimes. But yeah.
Sorry for the children in the background, but we're both moms, so
Yeah.
they're gonna be here.
Children are around.
Okay, so what would you say your strength is as a writer?
I think my strength is probably also my greatest weakness. I write very powerful, big words. Like, for instance, if someone screams in agony, it's not just an agonized scream, it's their scream rose up and slammed into the stars and shook the universe.
Wow.
That's kind of, and I've been told that it's my weakness, but I kind of love it, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay, so what do you think makes a good story?
I think that a good story needs a beginning that brings you in and makes you want to understand the premise and the characters. It needs a crisis and a climax where the person or character faces the climax. And I do firmly believe that every story needs an ending. Sorry, Marble.
Yes,
But every story needs an ending.
I agree. I hate being like left on a cliffhanger. Oh, that's like the worst feeling. Okay, so what you've had beta readers, right? What do they think of your work?
In general, there were very positive feedback. I think that they absolutely love my characters. Like, just like they're so passionate about my characters that they get very mad at me when my characters don't do what they would like my characters to do. So I think that is a big thing, just the relationships between the characters, and I'm always adding new characters in, so I've got so many characters. More than I should have.
When did you realize you wanted to be a writer?
I was probably about 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, and I started writing little stories and couldn't spell at all.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, but I would write little stories and little dramas, and I would tell them to my sister, and she would be very supportive and kind and tell me they were good.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I've never felt that way.
I like making.
Definitely not go with English, so I would never want to be a writer. So.
Well, I could not spell at all back then. Now I can, sort of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there's spell check now.
Spell check. Oh, I actually, when I was younger, I wanted to be a forensic scientist. Because I did like biology twice, because when I was homeschooled, like my mom said we could pick like certain subjects. Like we had to do the basics, but there were subjects that we could pick that we wanted to do, and I did biology like 2 years in a row.
That's awesome. I am not smart enough to be anything fancy like that.
What would you say is your interest in writing quirk?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Okay, what would you say is your interest in writing quirk?
My interesting writing quirk?
Yeah.
Oh, Oh boy, that's an interesting one. My interesting writing quirk. It might be that I like to write in the dark.
Really?
With all the lights off. And maybe a
Really?
candle. Yeah.
A little
I just
going.
get totally sucked into my world when
Mhm.
all of the visual is gone and I'm just there. And I really like that.
Okay. Where did you get your information or ideas for your books?
I do a lot of Googling when I don't know something or when I want to make sure that something is realistic. But obviously it's a fantasy world, so I don't have to worry too much about being real world. But I do want things to be realistic and to make sense. So for instance, wounds or anything like that, I want to make sure that I'm portraying things not healing too fast or healing too slow or anything like that. And my inspiration comes from other authors.
Okay.
I draw a lot of inspiration from C.S. Lewis, and I draw a lot of inspiration from Sarah J. Maas.
I say mass. I don't know exactly how you say it.
I say Maas too. In that I'm not really a spice girl. So when I was reading her books, I absolutely loved them, but it did get to a point eventually where I kind of had to stop reading them because the spice level was just too high for me. And I kind of was really, really sad about that. And so writing these books is special for me because they're a powerful, emotional journey like she would write. Not that I'm thefting anything, of course, but just that powerful emotional journey without the behind closed doors scenes. So,
which sometimes is a good thing because sometimes spice is too much.
it gets a little too much.
I'm
not a prude, but it does. There's a line.
I actually just recently read a book and it was like a Hades and Persephone's retelling, and I was so disappointed because it was like pretty much like all spice and there was like no plot. And I'm like, I want to know more about the world and like the characters and like, I don't care. Sorry if you see the camera getting bumped. It's the baby, okay? But yeah, I'm like, I want to know more about the world and the characters and, you know, instead of all that. Like, I'm
There's
okay
gotta be
with
some
a
world
little.
building.
Like, to me, I'm okay with a little, but when it gets to be a lot and it's like the majority of the book, then yeah, I tap out. Like, what do you like to do when you're not writing?
When I'm not writing, I'm putting bows in my daughter's hair, which is what I was doing just now. I'm homeschooling, chasing cows around. I actually am the events coordinator, fancy term for I do events for the homeschool group for the area. So working on that, and I do some reading when I can squeeze it in. And I watch a lot of movies and TV shows, kind of just keeping the creative part of my brain fed so that something can come out of it that's good. So I watch a lot of Marvel. I really like their world building is exquisite. I really enjoy that. Obviously Lord of the Rings, obviously Star Wars, obviously all the greats.
Don't hate me. Don't hate
I
me.
already do a little bit.
I have not read or watched Lord of the Rings. It's on my TBR.
That was really sad.
I know.
I'm sad for you.
Okay, so I actually grew up in a very sheltered home, and I was not allowed to read certain things. I was only allowed to read pretty much like Christian authors. That's it. So anything that had to do with like magical beings, even Harry Potter, I was not.
I wasn't allowed to read that either.
I was not allowed to read. So yeah, now as an adult, I'm like, people like look down on you because you haven't watched Lord of the Rings. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm getting to it, I promise.
We may have to watch them together sometime.
Okay. It's a plan. We'll do that.
Yeah.
So
we have the extended versions.
Oh.
So
boy.
commit about 4 hours ish to it. Yeah.
I will commit. What did your family think of your writing?
Well, okay, so funny story. One night, my daughter, who's about 5, wanted to know, or she wanted to hear my book before bed, because she knows mommy's writing a book. So I sat down and I started to read a scene to her, and I had to skip a bunch of parts because she's not going to understand this, and this is going to be too intense, and this is an intimate moment that she would just confuse her and she'd have a million questions, and it was just kind of funny. So my daughters are excited. They've seen the book cover, which nobody else has, so they're very special, and they're excited about the book cover and everything. My husband has read the whole book in all of its messy forms, and he is very supportive and very encouraging and very kind.
Well, that's good. You need that support system.
I ask him, so how'd I do? And he says, well, it's better than I could do. I'm like, all right.
Well, I'm not a writer. That would be me. I'm not a writer. So, what was one of the most surprising things you learned in creating your books?
I learned that even if I don't intend it, my worldview and my beliefs are going to come out in my writing. So I am a Christian, and I did not I didn't sit down and think, okay, this is going to be a Christian book, and this is going to smack everybody in the face with my faith, and this is going to be like Jesus, 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 Jesus. I sat down to write a fantasy story that sounded cool to me. And when I got done and I went back to read it, I realized that my faith was woven throughout the entire thing. And it was a real special moment for me of realizing just how connected I am to God. It was really cool.
That's awesome. I'm excited to read. What was the most difficult part of your writing process?
Showing my writing to other people.
Taking
It's
the plunge
really
and
scary. It was
putting it out
scary.
there.
It was so scary. And my best advice for that is, if you're gonna show it to somebody, like a critique group or even a beta reader, don't work too hard to polish it first. If they're your early readers, just let them see it in its rough form, because then the criticisms will not wound you because you didn't think it was perfect. You knew it was flawed. So when they say, hey, this is flawed, it's like, yeah, I know. Tell me how to fix it, instead of knife.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a smart way of thinking. I would never have thought about that. Okay, what comes first for you, the plot or the characters, and why?
Definitely the characters. Definitely the characters. The characters in my books drive the plot. So, yeah. Because I think that relationships drive our lives and the world. And what we care about determines what we do, and we care about people more than anything.
Very, very true. How do you develop your plot and characters?
With this book, I actually sat down before I started writing with world building sheets, and I filled them out. I've never done that before, and it's probably why this is the one that I finished and that I'm publishing, because I actually had a plan instead of just like, character, cool thing happens, and then I don't know what happens after that. So this time I was plotting a little bit more, and then I plugged characters into it. So
okay. Interesting. Okay, what would you say to an author who wants to design their own cover?
Well, first of all, I'm not a published author yet, so I can't speak to success, but I can speak to the fact that most of the time, if you're a writer, it's better to outsource the rest of it, to outsource the editing and the cover and all those things, because those things are marketing and target audience appeal and stuff like that. And most of the time, a writer writes from their heart and pours out their creative process onto the page. But you need, if you want to actually make money at it, you need somebody to kind of come alongside you who has a background in marketing and etc. and say, here's what will get your book in front of your audience. So that's kind of what I would say. I mean, more power to you if you want to design your cover, but it's I don't honestly recommend it. So,
what part of your book did you have the hardest time writing?
The reveal scenes. So I like to keep secrets and build up mystery. And so when it's time to reveal something, I hold back and I'm like, but it's not time yet, and it can't possibly be time. And so writing the reveal scenes, it always felt anticlimactic to me, because like, I'm finally telling you what's been going on behind the scenes, and now it's over. So that was hard for me. I kind of wanted to write the whole book and never tell you anything.
Oh, of course. Leave us hanging. What part of your book was the most fun to write?
I think probably the romance scenes. They're very clean. but they're very sweet, and there's a lot of passion in the cleanliness. There's a lot of passion, and those were fun to write. And also the fire elemental scenes. So my main character is a fire elemental, and so whenever she's using the fire, it's really powerful and cool to write. And there's a lot of rising and slamming into stars going on. Like there's big words and power, and I love writing that.
Oh, that sounds great. Which characters do you most relate to and why?
I most relate to my main character's best friend, Mila, because she is an extrovert and she's very bubbly and happy, and and she's just really, she's a leader, and she's a powerful person in her environment and in her family and in her world, and a lot of bad things happen to her, but she triumphs, and I love that about her.
What is a significant way your book has changed since the first draft?
Well, it's hard to answer that without giving away too much. So in the first draft, you don't hear much about the background of the religion that the world follows. And in the new draft, I actually wrote, outside of the book, I wrote down the entire religious text so that I would have a reference, so that I could bring it into the world and say, it says this here and it says that here, and just use bits and pieces and snippets of it. So that's a huge way that it has changed, so that the reader kind of understands where these decisions the characters are making come from, and a basis for them. So that's a big one. And doesn't give away too much, so.
Nice. Okay, what inspired the idea for your book?
Well, when about 4 years ago, when my youngest was born, she and I almost lost our lives, and I realized our days are limited, and we don't know how many days we have, and if there's something we want to do, we should do it. And that I've had a million book ideas since I was a kid, but the next one that came, I took it and I made it happen.
Nice. That's awesome. So, I mean, I'm sad that happened to you, but I mean, it's awesome that you got that perspective.
And it's crazy. It's crazy because before she was born, I once in a while I would think about all my unfinished books, and I would kind of ask God, is there ever going to be a time when I get to finish? Could you please make it possible for me to write again? And in a very, very difficult, painful way, he brought me to a point that I don't think I ever would have reached without it. I would never have become a published author without it. So, yeah, he answered my prayer.
How did you come up with the title for your book?
I came up with the title very early on, before the book was even done. It's To Bind Fire, and I played with alternative titles later when it was done, and honestly I just kept coming back to that one because it sums up the book so well. So yeah, To Bind Fire, that's what the book is about. And
I always like when the title and the cover matches like the actual contents of the book.
Oh, that's very important.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's some covers and I'm reading the book, I'm like, okay, how does this cover like go with this book?
They went a little bit too much to market and didn't think about
yes.
Yeah.
All right, if you could spend any day with another author, who would you choose?
Oh my goodness, you can't do that to me. Any deceased even?
Yeah.
Like,
author.
C.S. Lewis.
Really?
For sure. I want to sit in that pub with him, and I want to listen to him talk for hours and hours and hours.
You're gonna hate me again. I've not read a C.S. Lewis book. So you have to like tell me the book to start with him, because that is
that's
a
good question. That's a good question.
So
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the first one that he wrote. So if you start there, I feel like it gives you such a nice rounded overview of the worlds he's creating. And then I would read from there to the end, and then personally I would double back and read read them like they're prequels, the first few that ones that came before.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I'll make a mental note of that.
Yeah, and the movie, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie is exquisite. The ones they made after it were but you should watch that one too. It's really good.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to remember that. Okay. See how sheltered I was? I didn't get to read all these books.
You were more sheltered than me, and that's saying something.
Yeah. Okay, let's see, where was I? What is the most valuable piece of advice you've been given about writing?
I think it's the one about the early readers and not overthinking your work when you submit it to them.
That was a very good way of thinking, because
it opened
I would
up.
never have thought of that.
I was so scared to show it to people. I was so scared of their criticism, but that took a lot of the fear out of it. Just, it's not going to be perfect, and that's good. That's what these readers are for. They're here to help you.
Gotcha. Whom do you trust for objective and constructive criticism of your work?
My sister, number one. She's amazing. After that would be so I was incredibly fortunate to end up in a small critique group that I found through Facebook. A number of critique groups were started through a wonderful lady who wanted to help people find small groups to help with their writing. And our group was the only one that survived, kind of. The other ones fizzled and ours kept going. So I'm so fortunate. And they're called we call ourselves the Rogue Writers. And it's amazing. Like, I paid for a developmental edit. And I'll tell you right now, the feedback I'm getting from my little critique group is as valuable, if not more valuable, than the developmental edit I paid for. It's been huge.
What books do you enjoy reading?
Well, I'm enjoying this one right now. I'm going to do a little spiel for my friend Angie. She wrote, this is a dystopian fantasy called The Sewing. Baby time. By Angie Grigolinas, and I probably butchered the pronunciation. I'm sorry, Angie, if you see this. But this book, I am to chapter 6 or 7, and I'm digging it. She's an indie author, and I love supporting indie authors when I love their work, and I love this book. So this is a great one to check out. But I love C.S. Lewis. I love Tolkien. I love Brian.
We're being grabby.
Yeah. No, that's okay. They want to see the cute baby.
Yeah.
I'm loving this one right now too. Raising Dragons by Brian Davis. It's middle grade, so it's really easy read, and it's got dragons in it. So nice. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yes, exactly. Name an underappreciated novel that you love.
Okay. Actually, I have one. If I can find it. I might not have here it is. The Squire's Tale by Gerald Morris. Underappreciated by my reader group, but there's probably a huge following for his work. But this book is, like, you will laugh out loud the entire time. It's hilarious. And he has an entire series, and I love all of them. If I need something to read that's just going to kind of make me feel happy about life, that's what I go to.
Oh. What advice do you have for other writers?
When you're drafting, just let it come out on the page. Just don't worry about pronunciation, or not pronunciation. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about sentence flow or structure. Just let it come out and edit it later. Because a lot of times writers get caught up in, it has to be perfect when it comes out of my brain. It's not going to be. And if you try to force that, you're going to kind of get this intimidation thing going on. And if you're anything like me, you'll just stop writing. Because it's too intimidating and it's too scary. And why would anyone ever want to read my work anyway? And It's a whole journey. So just let it come out in its messiest form and fix it later.
Nice. That's very, very helpful advice. All right, so that was it for the author interview. I will link all of Dorothy's links down below. I'll put her TikTok, her Instagram, and her little website that she just put up.
Little website.
Little website. Sorry.
It is actually a little website.
You put it up, what, probably like
a couple of weeks ago. It was probably about a month ago.
Oh, a month ago.
Yep. And pretty
Well,
soon I'll have a newsletter
Okay.
running too. So
Well, I will link all that down below. I definitely recommend go and check out Dorothy's book that's coming out because it's going to be amazing. You definitely want to check it out. So that is all I have for you guys right now. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.